Hello and welcome to Monday Morning, where we watch the Sunday morning news show so that you don't have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Maté. Thank you so much for being here. Great to start the week with you and some of the most evil people on corporate TV. Our website is usefulidiots.podcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content. If you are watching this live with us right now, there are two options. There's like the normal option, and then there's also the mobile option. If you happen to be on the mobile option, but you want to be in the normal option, the link should be right there at the top of the description to go to the normal one. But this is not a normal week because we are in the midst of Trump and Netanyahu's regime change war on Iran, which is bringing terror to people across the region in ways that are not normal for Israel. Usually Israel just normalizes the people of the West Bank, the people of Gaza, people of Lebanon. Now, of course, people of Iran are feeling the brunt as well. Some of Israel and the U.S.'s recent attacks include a water desalination plant, oil infrastructure, which sent toxic clouds over Tehran, seriously threatening people's health. Of course, there was a school massacre, which kicked off this regime change war, which we're going to talk more about.
Which apparently is not a war.
And many other targets, civilian infrastructure targets that the U.S. and Israel have hit.
And also Lebanon and Gulf nations are involved, and for reasons that the media seems to be missing. But that's another story. But yes, there is more havoc than usual, and it's all the result of the actions of Israel and the United States. Although you'd think from the media that it was Iran's doing.
All right, well, let's get to it with our weekly recap from Meet the Depressed.
Good Sunday morning. President Trump's war with Iran is now entering its second week, with U.S. and Israeli airstrikes intensifying and Iran retaliating, now ensnaring 15 countries in the Middle East. On Saturday, President Trump, top administration.
Note how they say that. So Iran is retaliating and now ensnaring all these other countries, right? It's not that Iran is retaliating in a defensive way and attacking U.S. bases that are in other countries. It makes it seem like Iran is like spreading its tentacles and expanding this war. Disgusting.
Officials and grieving families paying their respects at a dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Of course, Trump, as he promised at the outset, is sacrificing U.S. forces. The death toll now of U.S. service members who've died since the start of Trump's regime change war is at least 7. And Trump, at the transfer ceremony, as you can see there, if you're watching this, he wore a baseball cap.
Oh, my God.
Like a white MAGA baseball cap, which is, I don't know, a little I think if a Democrat wore a baseball cap to a dignified transfer ceremony, I think you might see on Fox News a little outrage. And you know what Fox News did? And actually, if we have time, we'll get this later in the show. Fox News, when they initially reported the dignified transfer ceremony, they didn't show this footage. They showed old footage of a different dignified transfer ceremony.
Fake news.
Yeah. And they claimed that was a mistake. I don't know. Or maybe they saw how disrespectful it was for the commander-in-chief to wear a white baseball cap to a ceremony marking the return home of the bodies of soldiers killed because he launched a war, and they took different footage. But anyway,
I mean, I think it's more respectful of soldiers to not sacrifice them in a war of choice. I think it's more dignified to not wear a white baseball cap, but it's also more dignified to just not use them as cannon fodder.
Here.
Somber event honoring the 6 U.S. service members who were killed in an Iranian drone strike in Kuwait. It comes as NBC News has confirmed Russia is providing Iran with intelligence on the location of U.S. forces in the Middle East. President Trump saying on Friday.
Here we go. We got a Russia angle, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
This could be the way to get, if there are any sort of Democrats who are maybe thinking, hey, maybe I should listen to the majority of the country and I should just use Trump launching this war as a political tool to run on, to go against it because it's not popular. And this is what he ran against. Trump ran on ending regime change wars. Now he's launched a disastrous one. Maybe the fact that, or the claim that Russia is now involved, which Again, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but let's assume it's true. Maybe that will get them to totally fall in line, as they always do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's that. And I mean, you'll notice that it's all about grocery prices. Not that that's not a relevant point, but it would be nice if every now and then the Democrats just like threw a bone to the idea that they care about the lives of human beings, even when they're not American.
He will demand Iran's unconditional surrender before he'll make any deal to end the fighting. While NBC News reports the president has privately shown interest in sending ground troops to Iran. He was asked about what circumstances would lead to that Saturday night on Air Force One.
Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level.
I mean, look, there's so many things to say here. I don't think he's actually going to do that because I think that politically for him, that would be absolutely disastrous to send ground troops to fight Iran, which actually can fight back. And as he's learning now, is motivated to fight back, to defend their sovereignty.
Right.
But the fact that he's even threatening that, it speaks to what a complete fraud he is in running as the anti-war guy in so many elections, and how contemptuous he is of soldiers' lives, that he would even flirt with the idea of sending in a ground force for a completely unprovoked, unnecessary, and immoral war. And I just think this reflects the fact he's musing about this, just reflects that this war is not going the way he was told by Netanyahu and his neocon advisors, that like Iran was going to fall. All we have to do is just bomb their infrastructure. They're all going to fall. The government's going to turn against itself. The regime, quote unquote, is going to turn against itself. That's not happening. So that's why now he has to, I think, in another bid to intimidate Iran and get it to crumble, to surrender, to bow, as he's demanding. He's musing about this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I don't even know anymore, like in terms of predicting what he'll do, because he really has done a bunch of stuff that I didn't think he would do. So I wouldn't rule out boots on the ground. I mean, I think it would cause a major backlash, but I don't know.
You certainly can't rule anything out with someone who might not be like is not mentally competent. I shouldn't qualify that. He's not mentally competent. So you certainly cannot rule anything out with this guy, especially given how much he has listened to Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. But I mean, because he just listens, you can just see that he clearly takes like the advice of random people. Like there's not consistency. You get the sense it's the last person who said something that he liked, which was probably accompanied by praise.
All right. So you heard there, Trump demanding what he called Iran's unconditional surrender. So to try to bring that about, what he's doing is bombing the infrastructure that provides the conditions for survival. He's bombed oil infrastructure. He's bombed a water desalination plant. He's bombed schools across the country. More than 10,000 sites, I believe, have been bombed by the U.S. and Israel in Iran just so far. And of course, you're repeating the Gaza playbook, which is hitting everything that a civilian population needs to survive. And one of the first things that Israel and the U.S. hit when they kicked this off last week was a school in southern Manab, and that killed 175 people, mostly children. Everybody knew from the start that this was the U.S. and Israel. If it wasn't, they would have denied it. Now the evidence is overwhelming. We've just gotten video of literally a U.S. Tomahawk missile hitting the school. So everyone knows that it was the U.S. and Israel. I mean, it was obvious to me when they didn't deny it that it was them, because they know exactly where their missiles go. But Trump is now claiming that it was Iran that did it. And all the Pentagon will say is we're investigating, which means we know we did it. We just don't want to admit it yet.
Yeah. And it's also worth noting that this was a double tap, which is kind of a euphemism, honestly. It's but they struck once, and then people were trying to shelter, and they struck again.
So the foreign minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, he went on Meet the Depressed, and watch how he was questioned about the school massacre by Kristen Welker.
To the strike on the elementary school in southern Iran. It killed more than 170 people, including many children.
Who were, by the way, 7 through 12.
President Trump said Iran is responsible for that strike. What is your response to what the president said?
Well, it is funny. It is our school. These are our students, our girls, and they are attacked by an American fighter, a jet fighter, and they have been killed. Why Iran is responsible? Have we started this war? Have we attacked our own people? No, we were negotiating with the United States. And in the middle of negotiations, in the middle of diplomacy, they decided to attack us. And they have attacked so many places, including schools and hospitals. And there are all evidences that this school is attacked by an American, jet fighter.
Where is the Iranian evidence that this was a U.S. attack, a jet fighter, as you say? Will you provide
But if it was not you,
I mean, I've never heard such a stupid question. Where is the evidence? Dude, I think even her own outlet reported the evidence that
we're gonna,
U.S. investigators concluded it was likely us. There was the video that came out of the U.S. Tomahawk missile. Everyone knows it was the U.S. and she's like pressing the Iranian foreign minister for evidence.
CNN looked into it. New York Times. And we're going to see another question where it's clear that she knows a little bit more than she's letting on. But I mean, it is unbelievable. First of all, he probably deserves a Nobel Peace Prize just for tolerating these interviews. I mean, the patience this man has to come back on. He is very respectful, but he couldn't help but laugh. He wasn't laughing at her. He was laughing at the question because it is so ridiculous. But then, you know what, Aaron, I realized that it's not that ridiculous because Kristen is probably Welker is probably used to Israel. And, Israel loves killing its own people, right? They're happy to do that. October 7th, Hannibal Directive. They shot their own hostages. They bombed their own people. So maybe she just assumes that Iran does that like Israel does. But the thing is, of course, no, they don't.
If it was not U.S., then who was that? Maybe Israelis. But it is obvious who else is attacking us.
Well, let me move on to this question about potential ground.
Maybe she should have asked him, you know what she should have asked him? What evidence do you have that it wasn't UFOs? Could it not have been an alien attack?
It's just so insulting. It's so insulting to everyone. Okay, well, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, he was on ABC's This Week, and he also was asked about this, and let's hear his answer.
170 people, including many children, were killed in a strike on a school in southern.
Oh, sorry, he was on the same program. My bad.
And
Same program, same anchor. Let's hear.
In Iran last weekend. On Saturday, President Trump said he thinks Iran was behind the bombing, but NBC News and others are reporting that the military's preliminary finding is that it's increasingly likely that a U.S. munition was responsible. Was Iran?
Interesting. So she had evidence, as you said, from her own network. And at this point, there were all other reports, again, from the New York Times and CNN. And yet when she asked the foreign minister of Iran, she didn't mention that. I wonder why.
If only the foreign minister of Iran had been given a script of Meet the Press for the whole show, he could have been like, when she pressed him for evidence, he could have been like, my evidence is the question you're going to ask later on to the UN ambassador that for some reason you're forgetting right now.
Yeah.
That's my evidence.
And can you imagine watching this, like being in Iran, this poor guy watching this in Iran and seeing her ask the question afterwards and being like, what the fuck? But also, we all know how media works today, and so many people are going to see that clip of her and the foreign minister without seeing the rest of the show. People will watch clips all the time and not the entire show. So she really is helping manufacture consent because she is helping suggest that this was Iran and not the U.S., in coordination with Israel. And every time a journalist does something like this, she's contributing to the idea that Iran is this rogue, irrational actor that you can't rely on, you can't depend on, you can't trust, and that will do crazy things like strike its own people or strike Gulf countries. Why would they be doing that? And as we've pointed out again and again, they're striking U.S. bases in those countries.
Yeah, and when that doesn't work, you can still claim some sort of moral high ground, even though you're the one slaughtering civilians in a war you started, as we're going to see here.
And the Russia
from
angle,
Mike
too.
Pence.
Or the United States responsible, and will the U.S. provide evidence to the American people?
Well, here's look, a couple of things here. One, well, let's let the investigation play out. Number two, again, as a veteran and special operator.
Let's let the investigation play out, except when Donald Trump says it was Iran.
Right. Yeah.
It was Iran. Trump's not letting the investigation playing out. He's
Yeah.
lying through his teeth and saying that it was Iran when everyone around him knows it wasn't. But it's the best they can do because they can't lie so brazenly.
Yeah.
Because they have some mental faculties left. So they're saying, let's let the investigation play out.
Right.
The investigation, they know exactly that it was the U.S. In fact,
Yeah.
they knew that within seconds. I would bet anything. They knew exactly where their missiles go. These are high-tech missiles, probably launched from a submarine in this case, because it was a Tomahawk. They know exactly where this went. This bombed the school, and they're just waiting to admit it because they don't want to have the PR fallout from massacring a bunch of girls at a school, because they want to have the opportunity to continue carrying out such massacres
Right.
for many more weeks to come. And acknowledging this now would sort of impede that effort.
Also, I mean, I brought up the double tap thing, but just imagine surviving a first strike, going to shelter, and then you're killed in the second one.
Yeah, well, if you're a victim of Israel in the U.S., you're very used to that. I mean, that's what they do in
Yeah,
Gaza.
exactly right.
That's what they do in Lebanon. This happens.
Yeah, they wait for
all the
they
time.
like to get the ambulances, like
Yeah.
the medical teams. Yeah.
Yeah.
Despicable.
We never deliberately attack civilians. If civilians were injured, it's always by accident. Contrast that. I mean, this is really rich coming from the Iranians, who they and their proxies hide caches of weapons and military apparatus in hospitals and schools. We know they do that all over the world. And this is coming from a regime that literally has massacred its own people at an industrial scale.
Okay, so two things here. Now we're doing the Israeli thing where we're blaming the civilians for their own murder at the hands of Israel and the U.S. by saying that Iran hides weapons in hospitals. Like this was the excuse in Gaza. This was the excuse in Gaza because in Gaza, Israel's attacking a concentration camp and they're hitting all the hospitals. So to be able to justify that, you're saying, oh, well, these insurgents are hiding missiles and weapons inside the hospitals, which of course was a lie. And in fact, at Al-Shifa hospital, the Israeli military was caught on tape planting weapons. But now they're trying to, because that playbook worked for them, I guess, in Gaza, they think, because the corporate media went along with it. Now they're going to try that out in Iran, a massive country, and they just happen to be hiding missiles and weapons inside that elementary school. But first of all, like to do what? Like Iran is not fighting an Israeli occupation, like unlike Gaza, it's like where that lie is, you know, where they're trying to pass that lie off. So even like taking that lie and trying to apply it to Iran, it's so illogical. It doesn't even make sense. It was false in Gaza, but it's even more ridiculous in Iran, which is not like under an Israeli military occupation. It's not like hosting an insurgency to resist an illegal military occupation. It's just a normal country.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to hide missiles in their school. And so he's taking the moral high ground. And then he mentions, and it's really rich coming from a government that killed its own people. This was the point of that whole propaganda exercise.
Yeah.
To pave the way for aggression against Iran by claiming we have to go in and kill people there because they killed their own people during demonstrations.
Right.
And that's why we saw all these inflated figures. And that's why we saw the U.S. Treasury Secretary brag that the U.S. sparked those protests, sparked the crackdown that happened by destroying Iran's economy. So they wanted to destroy Iran's economy, get people out in the streets, claim there's this massive wave of government killings, and then go in and use that as a pretext to actually commit actual killings.
And of course, send instigators, outside instigators, right? Have then brag about it. Have Pompeo talk about Hamas, because that, of course, will justify a harsher government crackdown, right? Or cause a harsher government crackdown. And then all of the numbers go up. I mean, we know that they inflated them. But this is something that a lot of people were pointing out, that there was an intention to make the clashes worse in Iran, so that they would have more evidence of this. And you know what? When Waltz talks about not killing civilians, I mean, how about the collateral murder video that Julian Assange released? Or how about going back to the Vietnam War, the My Lai massacre, where at least 347, if not 504 civilians, almost all women, children, and elderly men were murdered. Some of the women were gang raped. What about also, things in Afghanistan documented by Seth Harp's great book, For Bragg Cartel, where you have America's elite soldiers in special ops killing up to 100 Afghans at a time and leaving whole villages in smoking ruins, or dropping a 2,000-pound bomb on civilian water infrastructure.
Yeah, no shortage of examples to show that Mike Waltz is just lying through his teeth. And
Yeah.
just the nerve of someone to go and like claim the moral high ground over Iran when his government launched an unprovoked war and his government kicked it off by massacring.
Yeah. And they
175 people, mostly girls. And I think before when you were talking about Mike Pompeo bragging, you said Hamas, but I think you meant Mossad, that he was bragging.
Sorry,
that
Mossad. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
People inside of Iran. So they've taken credit for helping to fuel unrest, which then, of course, if you're having riots, if you're having armed protesters kill government forces, there's going to be a crackdown. That's what would happen here. I mean, look what happens in Minneapolis, where you have 2 unarmed protesters being killed. So imagine what happens when you have armed protesters.
Right.
There's going to be a crackdown. And then they use that to justify killing many more people with U.S. bombs. Yeah,
and I still remember, I thought it was so interesting when Samira Moyahedin said when every time they talk about foreign involvement or mention, because it was Mike Pompeo, but it was also Israeli politicians who were talking about Israel's presence in these protests. And she said, every time they do that, they put targets on the backs of the protesters who are not foreign agents.
Okay, let's skip ahead. Let's go to Chris Murphy. He's a Democratic senator, and he actually gave a somewhat decent answer when it comes to this issue of the school massacre in Manab.
New evidence suggests that the U.S. military may have been responsible for a strike on a girls' elementary school in Iran. Iranian officials say at least 168 children and 14 teachers were killed. We have not.
Of course. Does he ever say Israeli officials have said, insert whatever statistic? No, it's just reported as the numbers killed if it comes from Israel. But if it comes from, if it happens in Gaza, then it's Hamas has claimed, or the Iranian officials.
The Hamas-run Iranian health ministry. That's
what
Jacob's trying to say. The Hamas-run Iranian health ministry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Were killed. We have not independently verified those numbers. Trump.
Again, does he ever do that with Israel's numbers?
No, and in fact, recently Israel admitted that Hamas's numbers, the Hamas-run health ministry, quote unquote, that they're accurate, and in fact, an undercount. Right. So I guess you could say now that the IDF is the Hamas-run IDF, because even now the IDF accepts the Hamas-run.
Yeah, exactly.
Numbers. Yeah, and Jake Tapper is just basically trying to say that like these numbers have cooties. Like we're gonna sort of put them out there, and yes, our own investigation says it was the U.S., but we're not going to trust the numbers that come up because it comes from Iran. So therefore, there's cooties. So just take that with a grain of salt.
The same Jake Tapper who was up in arms because the people protesting the U.S. funded, U.S. backed, U.S. coordinated genocide in Gaza, those people weren't protesting against the government of Iran. U.S. taxpayers. He thought that was hypocrisy.
Yeah, he wants people to protest Iran for retaliating.
Exactly.
That's what he called for. I don't think you're going to get a big mobilization out of that in this country, at least. Okay.
Well, from the monarchists, but that's
so let's hear from Chris Murphy.
Was asked about it. He said he thinks Iran did it. What do you know as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee? And if it was the U.S., do you think there should be accountability? And do you trust Secretary Hegseth to bring about that accountability?
I think it is likely the United States that carried out this attack on this school. I think it's unforgivable under any circumstances, but the fact that this was one of our first targeting decisions, that this mistake was made on the first day of war, I think speaks to the incompetence of the leadership of the Department of Defense. There's also some reporting in the last 48 hours that we hit a desalinization plant. That may be an intentional.
So, Chris Murphy pointing out that this is one of the first targets, I think it's a really important point because I'm not even sure if by the time this happened that Iran had even retaliated yet. So it would have been literally impossible for Iran to be responsible for this strike, right? Because if this is one of the first targets that the U.S.
Right.
hits, then Iran hasn't even retaliated yet because
Right.
they're being bombed in an opening wave of attacks by the U.S. and Israel. So Trump's claim that this was Iran, and by the way, this was picked up by many people online too. People, pro-Shah accounts, social media accounts were saying that this was Iran. It
Right.
doesn't
They were
even seem to
pretending
be.
it was there was proof of it, like it had been debunked that it was the state.
Yeah. I don't even think that it would have been just timeline-wise even possible. Now, it wasn't Iran, we know that, but it just shows how ridiculous those claims were.
Maybe they started this whole thing, Aaron.
Yeah, they started the war by killing their own leader and
Yeah.
bombing their own school. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
honestly, maybe Trump will be saying that soon.
Yeah.
Strike. If we're hitting girls' schools by mistake and trying to separate the ability of the Iranian people to get clean water, that's a war ultimately that's going to give rise to a broader Shia militancy against the United States. It was our attack.
How about just calling it a war crime?
Can't do that. No,
No,
can't do
no,
that.
no.
Got to bring us back to how this impacts us. Yeah.
And the idea that it was a mistake to strike the girls' school, because we would just never do that.
Yeah, it's true. It's always a mistake. It's always
Yeah.
a mistake.
On
He
civil-
can't fathom it was maybe intentional.
Right.
Some intentional, some unintentional, inside Afghanistan that ended up giving rise to
Sorry, let me remind you a
Shia
little bit.
militancy against the United States. It was our attacks on civilians, some intentional, some unintentional, inside Afghanistan.
If Mike Waltz heard that, he'd be so upset. He just said that there were some intentional attacks on civilians in Afghanistan. Wow.
That ended up giving rise to giving a second chance to the Taliban.
Do you think the strike against the girls' school is a war crime?
Well, I think if it's a mistake, it's very different than an intentional strike. So there are undoubtedly mistakes that are made in war. I trust that this was a mistake, but the fact that it was a mistake made on the first day, I just think speaks to the fact that we don't have serious people right now making decisions at the White House.
Before you go,
Why would he? First of all, I like the way that Jake Tapper. It sounds like he was like almost in tears. He was gonna cry. He's like, "You think this was a war crime?" He can't envision that. Don't you dare say that. And poor Jake. I mean, Jake is used to defending an army whose war crimes are kind of the default, right? When you're talking about the IDF, and I'm not whitewashing the U.S. military, but it's not quite as it's like everything that Israel does is a war crime. The U.S. kind of likes to sprinkle some war crimes into their non-war crimes. But it is even Chris Murphy, who's better on this than some others, can't bring himself to call it a war crime, or can't bring himself to admit that it was not a mistake, or likely not a mistake. I mean, why are we assuming it was a mistake? I get, I know why he's doing that, because it's a more appealing argument, I think, to criticize. And we saw this with Vietnam, right? Like, we just couldn't handle it. It was a strategic blunder, bumbling, incompetent people, as opposed to, no, it's an immoral war that we shouldn't have ever fought. And you see a similar framing here, where it's an incompetence question, but also, of course, it's framed. And I understand politicians have to make this argument, but it would be nice if it wasn't just the only one. If they actually talked about, again, the civilians who happen to not be American. But of course, it's all about not creating more terrorism, right? That's his fear, like in Afghanistan.
All right. Well, I believe I called that answer from Chris Murphy somewhat decent. I'm going to retract that. That is withdrawn, officially withdrawn. Chris Murphy, do better. If you can't call it a war crime when the U.S. slaughters 175 people, mostly girls, at an elementary school, I don't know what a war crime is then.
Right.
I don't know why that's so hard. Like why they can't bring themselves, like, yeah, killing a bunch of children is a war crime at a school.
Unless it's an accident, which is what he's claiming.
But the thing is, whether it's an accident or not, if like the war itself is an act of aggression, which according to the Nuremberg trials is the supreme international crime, like what does it matter whether or not they can officially say it's an accident if the war in which it happened is illegal and the ultimate really crime under international law, which is the act of aggression. Anyway, maybe one day that will be litigated at the International Criminal Court. JK, that never will be, because we only go after bad guys at the ICC, unless, of course, it's a case of Israel where they issued a very rare indictment of a European state, which they had to do because just the genocide was going on for so long and it was so blatantly criminal. But I don't expect that to happen here when
Right.
it comes to Trump's war on Iran. All right, let's turn to Energy Secretary Chris Wright. It's his job now to come out and defend this war. Now, I believe he's one of the first Trump principals to go on the Sunday morning news shows to defend this war. Last week when this kicked off, you didn't really see anybody, especially people like J.D. Vance or Tulsi Gabbard, who when campaigning for Trump, they were like, if you want to stop regime change wars, endless wars, then you got to vote for this guy because he's not going to launch some stupid war in the Middle East. And of course, that's exactly what Trump did. So Energy Secretary Chris Wright, he's one of the first Trump principals to come out and defend this thing. And he's got to contend the fact that, hey, the guy who promised to like bring down prices is presiding over a massive spike in energy prices because he decided to go to war on Iran.
I like massive spike, massive strike, massive massacres. That's what you can call the this war, this non-war.
Out of Tehran after the Israeli military says it struck fuel sites in the Iranian capital. Is this going to be a new continuing strategy for the U.S. and Israel targeting Iran's oil industry?
No, there are no plans to target Iran's oil industry, their natural gas industry, or anything about their energy industry. If these are Israeli strikes, these are local fuel depots to fill up the gas tank, in this neighborhood in Tehran. The U.S.
Why does he say that with so much contempt? This neighborhood in Tehran. What is that? Is that how does he manage to imply that a neighborhood is devious?
Yeah. And they're doing this thing where they're like, yeah, this is not us. This is just our partner that we went to war with, that we've coordinated everything with to every single minute detail. But this wasn't us. This was the Israelis.
Imagine if you were talking to like a married couple and you got didn't get invited. And not that this is a perfect analogy because not getting invited to a dinner party is not a war crime. But if you were talking to the husband of the wife and the husband was like, oh, that wasn't me, that was my wife. No, you're a unit. You're a married unit. And that's about as how linked the U.S. and Israel are.
The most shameful thing, that reporter for Axios, Barak Ravid, who's also an Israeli military veteran, he reported that the White House was like taken aback at these Israeli strikes on Iran's oil infrastructure. And like, this went too far for Trump. And like, the White House is mad. And like, they want us to believe this after more than 2.5 years of like genocide. And there's been so many stories. I think Barak Ravid has written the story like, on dozens of times now. U.S. taken aback at Israeli aggression. Like the U.S. is so shocked. Whoa. When of course they're partners in crime the entire time.
I mean, Trump, I just want to remind you, Trump, you look like a real cuck. You are letting Netanyahu come off as your boss.
Well, yeah. I mean, certainly it didn't help when Marco Rubio literally tried to argue that the U.S. went to war because they knew Israel was about to go to war. And since they don't want to say no to Israel, they knew that Iran would retaliate against U.S. soldiers. So that's why the U.S. had to strike first. Yeah. So basically, Rubio's excuse was Israel made us do it, which I don't think is true. Like, I don't think it's actually true. I do think Netanyahu certainly influenced this war, big time. But in terms of this idea that like we had to start bombing because we knew Israel was going to bomb and we couldn't stop them. I mean, the fact that he thought that excuse was palatable, it shows how cucked they are,
and out of touch,
and completely out of touch with the fact that like, oh, really? So like now we go to war because Israel's about to go to war. Like that's our new policy. Like the most important decision a president can make is now subordinated to what Israel does. Right. It was such a revealing fake argument from Rubio.
Yeah, and then he had to walk it back, and that was really embarrassing because then Trump was asked about it, and Trump was like, "No, Israel didn't force our head. If anything, we forced Israel's head."
Yeah, exactly.
And then Rubio's asked.
Trump is at least being more honest than Rubio was.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and then well, I don't think Trump forced Israel's hand, but I guess Trump at least is giving the agency to the United States that it deserves. Yes. But and then Rubio has no response when asked about it. They're like, well, "You said it was Israel the other day." He's like, "No, I didn't." Except it's literally recorded. So
yeah, like he literally, exactly. He was like, like, okay, like, were you listening to me? Because I didn't say that. Of course, he said that. He said that twice actually in that news conference. So embarrassing. Anyway, let's hear from Chris Wright about how we're not trying to hit Iran's oil infrastructure, and don't worry about gas prices that are rising around the world.
fill up the gas tank, in this neighborhood in Tehran. The U.S. is targeting zero energy infrastructure.
So
we want to end a 47-year war.
CNN's Fred Pleitkin's on the ground in Tehran, and he reports thick.
Oh, they're trying to end a war. Okay, I thought they started a war by massacring a bunch of girls, slaughtering people across Iran, bombing its infrastructure, killing its leader, sending more U.S. military assets to the region. But they're trying to end the war that began 47 years ago when Iran overthrew a dictator that we helped install. Okay,
Right.
that's what's happening here. We're trying to end a war, not start one. Even though Iran has fired 0 shots at the U.S. throughout this war, like 0 Iranian missiles have hit the U.S. Whenever Iran hits at U.S. military assets in the region, it's 100% always in retaliation for U.S. strikes on Iran. So, for example, the murder of their top general, Qasem Soleimani. So it's a weird war for 47 years if one side doesn't fire any shots at the other side.
Yeah, it is a weird war. Yeah, strange
Yeah.
war. Yeah, so they're using the Iranian Revolution as the start date, making it 47 years. I'll make it a little longer and start with 1953 overthrow of Mossadegh, the legally elected leader of Iran, who the CIA just had to remove.
Yes, because he, speaking of oil, wanted to control Iran's oil rather than hand it over to U.S. and British corporations.
Right.
And so he had to go. And now we have to bomb Iran's oil to bring about returning a leader who will do our bidding and let us take their oil. It's really such beautiful synergy, how history repeats itself.
It really does.
Okay, more from Chris Wright.
Black smoke and oil raining from the sky. One resident told CNN, it quote, feels like we're suffocating. I know that the president has voiced.
By the way, I'm actually, I got to say, my standards for Jake Tapper are so low that I was almost like giving him a standing ovation for actually mentioning something like this.
Well, Jake Tapper was just quoting a resident of Tehran saying it feels like we're suffocating. He's also, I think, expressing how he feels having to give voice to a person from Tehran, a victim of U.S. Israeli aggression. Like,
so he really
feels like,
really landed.
It feels like I'm suffocating having to give voice to a victim of Israeli aggression.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Israeli self-defense.
A concern for the Iranian people in the last few months. You are a former energy executive.
Wait, sorry. Let me rewind it so we can hear the setup to this.
The president has voiced a concern for the Iranian people in the last few months. You are a former energy executive.
And obviously, we take Trump's words about that very seriously, very sincere in his support, concern with the Iranian people, including all the people that he's literally bombing to death.
What are the health impacts from these strikes on fuel sites?
Of course, there's air quality impacts of that, but I would focus on the thousands of American soldiers that the Iranian.
Why are you going to ask me about the way this is going to affect Iranian people when we have American soldiers that we can be talking about instead?
Yeah, like there's going to be air quality impacts of like bombing oil infrastructure and sending toxic clouds over a city of 10 million people.
Yeah.
But anyway, never mind that. Let's talk about our fake pretext for this war, which is that Iran has killed thousands of American soldiers.
Right. Yeah.
Look, back when they were trying to make this argument that Iran is responsible for killing all these soldiers, I mean, there's so many problems with it. First of all, it's not thousands of American soldiers that you can trace to Iran. It's about 600 who were killed by Shia militias in Iraq. But, one of the problems with that making the argument is, why were these soldiers killed? Is because George W. Bush sent them there in an illegal war of aggression, in which he was promising after taking out Iraq that he was going to go to Iran. So if you're Iran and your country is, and you're sitting next to a country that gets invaded, and the invaders are saying, we're going to come for you next, you think maybe you're going to try to stop the invaders and keep them in Iraq and not have them come over to your country where they're promising to overthrow you? Like, wouldn't we do that if like Russia invaded Mexico?
Right. Exactly. So, they just want them to literally lay down their arms and let us attack them.
Yeah.
And if they defend themselves, they're the ones that fall.
And even then, the extent to which Iran supplied weapons and explosives to Shia militias in Iraq that killed U.S. soldiers, even that, I mean, I'm sure there's some, but even there, I think the numbers of around 600 are arguably even inflated. Scott Horton's done a lot of work on this in his books, but regardless, it's just, there's so many assumptions made in this statement that are so false. But the most glaring one is that we shouldn't even care about civilians who are now going to suffer health impacts because of our bombs. Let's think about our soldiers and how they were impacted by wars of aggression that we started.
Yeah, exactly.
In previous years.
Yeah. I mean, also we should just, he makes it seem like it's like slightly inconvenient, air quality issues, but just so we can go over some of the effects. So yeah, they're releasing a bomb of chemicals and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, the carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, benzene, and unburned hydrocarbons also then settle on the earth plant soil, poison everything in its wake. And then when people eat the food or drink the water or breathe the air, that can cause cancer, lung disease. And when mixed with water and rain down, it can actually burn skin and eyes. And multiple studies have shown that people close to oil refinery fires who are exposed to benzene and other chemicals experience far higher rates of cancer. So the list goes on. So just that's the type of stuff that you don't hear from Chris Wright or Jake Tapper.
Okay, back to Chris Wright.
Regime is killed over the years. They opened their regime by kidnapping 66 Americans and holding them hostage for over a year. 3 years later, they killed hundreds of Marines in Beirut, doing nothing of aggression towards Iran. And then they continued that through IED bombs in Iraq. So this is a murder.
Okay, so now he's referring to Lebanese militias, who, yes, were backed by Iran, killing Marines in Lebanon. Why were the Marines in Lebanon? Why are they there? Like, why is it okay? Why is it okay for us to invade foreign countries? And again, similar to now, helping out Israel, because Israel back then was invading Lebanon and killing tens of thousands of people. Of course, all that is simply just taken for granted that we can go invade foreign countries, and if we face any blowback, if our soldiers get hurt, it's the adversary's fault.
Right. And by the way, that attack, that invasion of Lebanon, was called a Holocaust by major peacenik anti-war activist, pro-Palestinian activist Ronald Reagan.
That's right.
On a phone call to Begin. And he called it off, which is what, of course, Joe Biden could have done.
Yeah, and Donald Trump. And Donald Trump
course,
is now participating in a new war with his bestie Netanyahu.
Regime. In fact, they recently killed somewhere between 10 and 30,000 of their own citizens protesting their murderous regime. So that's a far greater worry than a few days of lower air quality in Tehran. They're just not even on the same magnitude.
Let's talk about.
Okay, that's just so shameful. So we're going to justify sickening people in Tehran, polluting their city, polluting their environment by saying that by trying to claim that we care about human rights. So we have to go violate human rights because Iran, the regime, killed between 10 and 30,000 people. By the way, where are they getting these figures from?
Right.
Because it's every week it's a new figure. They killed 30,000, 40,000, 20,000. And again, the part that gets left out is that no one's verified these death toll numbers. I find it increasingly, I find it really hard to believe that somehow, like, let's take the lowest figure. He said there, 10,000. You're saying Iran in a few days just killed 10,000 people, just like randomly? And how? Like with guns, like with bombs? That's a lot of people to kill. And the part that gets left out is, again, as we've talked about, the U.S. helped instigate these protests by destroying Iran's economy, as they bragged about. And then Mike Pompeo and Israelis bragged that they'd infiltrated the protests and that the Mossad had given guns to people to kill Iranian security forces. Right. And so, yes, in the process, people were killed, people died. But this idea that this was just some mass slaughter by the government of unarmed protesters is just baseless. And even if it were true, how would that justify destroying Iran, massacring school children, and poisoning their air?
Right, exactly. Yeah. We want to, so because they killed people, we thought we'd get in on the action and kill a bunch more.
Okay, now you heard there at the end, like, this is a small, rising oil prices is, there's a small price to pay for taking out this government. And
lung cancer.
What we're seeing there is like a little preview of what is a new talking point from the Trump government. And the Twitter account Blue ATL Georgia put together a helpful clip compilation of this new talking point from the White House.
Short-term disruption. This is a short-term disruption for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain be for long-term gain.
We're going to have some short-term pain with long-term gain. Short-term pay for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain, yes, but we've got some long-term gain. Short-term spike for a long-term gain.
Some short-term
she messed up the line, by the way.
pain for American consumers. We may have to deal with that in the short term.
Short-term and temporary.
Temporary short-term pain.
It's going to suck in the short term.
Some short-term pain.
Short-term pain. We have to focus on the short term.
Short-term.
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 Short-term and long-term.
Short-term blip. Hopefully this is a short-term pain. Short-term is highly outweighed of the long-term benefits.
Some short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain.
Wow. On message. Congrats, guys.
I'd love to see that memo that came out. Like, guys, we got it. We got the talking point. Shoot, no, wait for it. I wonder if there was like a rollout, like a celebration, like, you know, like they have like gender reveal parties where they have like blue smoke. Like, guys, we got the talking point. Check it out. It's okay. You ready? Boom. And there's smoke and like fireworks. Short-term pain for long-term gain. And I was like, yay. Oh my God, we got it. Let's go on Fox News and repeat it. Like little parrots.
Yeah. Probably black smoke would be a more appropriate thing to.
Yes, to signify the black smoke over Tehran as a result of U.S. bombings. Short-term pain for long-term gain. And the long-term gain is what? A lot of people dead for eternity, and Israel being even more powerful and able to carry out even more aggression with less resistance. That's the long-term gain they're looking for. And maybe taking control of Iran's oil, as we're going to hear people brag about soon. That's also what they're talking about, stealing another country's energy resources.
Borrowing them.
Okay. Well,
sharing.
It wouldn't be a episode of Useful Idiots Monday Morning without a little example of what we like to call adversarial warmongering, where a journalist who's supposed to challenge power does challenge power, but not from the perspective of like, hey, you know, why are you doing this immoral thing? But from the perspective of, hey, why aren't you even being more of a warmonger? And we're going to see an example of that from Margaret Brennan, CBS News, speaking to Energy Secretary Chris Wright.
I want to ask you about Venezuela. The U.S. deposed Maduro. He's sitting in a prison.
And by the way, remember, I don't know if you remember this a couple months ago when we first kidnapped Maduro. You tweeted about her ridiculous response where she's like, why didn't you regime change harder? And I gave her the benefit of the doubt thinking, must have been a rhetorical question, being like, if you were going to regime change, why don't you just do it? You didn't. So what the hell's wrong with you? But no, she was saying you should regime change harder. And so this is going to be a similar framing. And let's take a listen.
This past week, though, we had the Interior Secretary visiting Venezuela and sitting across from Maduro's chief thug, Diosdado Cabello.
Okay, one thing. She loves calling him a chief thug. This is at least the third time she's done that. It's not Diosdado. It's if she wants to say his name, she should just say it like correctly. She says it like it's Portuguese or something. And she should know it because she drops it all the time. So she is so upset about this. I mean, look at this. The fact that there's the suggestion of American officials and Venezuelan officials being equal, that is disgusting. Listen to how upset she is.
This is someone who has a $25 million bounty on his head. He ran the prisons. He ran the militias. He was treated as a counterpart to an American official. Is this
Doug Burgum? First of all, who the hell cares about Doug Burgum? But
is this the same playbook the Trump administration is going to run in Iran, that you will deal with the same regime you've been telling me is terrible to deal with for 47 years?
We don't know what the regime will be in place at the end of this conflict, but we do know that regime will not have a massive weapons arsenal. That regime will no longer be a massive threat to Americans and to the Middle East and to global oil supplies. President Trump is using bold leadership. We can't change the world at a blink of an eye, but we can steer it in massively positive directions. And yes, Venezuela is a great example of that. Crime in the nearby Trinidad and Tobago has plummeted already from our actions in Venezuela and President Trump's insistence that he's going to work with our neighbors to reduce drug trafficking in the Western Hemisphere. Leadership involves risks, but if you want to drive improvement, you've got to be confident, you've got to have the right agenda, and you've got to have the courage to do it.
All right. So great job, Margaret Brennan, being more of a hawk than the Trump administration. by, and again, like, just, you're a journalist, so referring to a foreign government's minister as a chief thug, it's just so childish.
Disgusting. Yeah.
Have some self-respect, have some respect for the profession. Like, if you don't like the guy, you can say that, but his chief thug, like, okay, all right.
What does she want him to do? Like, what does she want Doug Burgum to do? Like, come in there with a shotgun and like kick over some chairs, pistol whip him.
Yeah. And would she ever refer to a member of the Trump administration or the Israeli government as a chief, as a thug?
Right. Yeah.
No, of course not. When I can guarantee you that you can take any number of Israeli officials or U.S. officials and look at their body count, number of people they're responsible for killing, and compare that to this Venezuelan minister she's talking about, it wouldn't even be in the same universe.
You know what, Margaret, you're going to be really upset. You know what Diosdado means? God-given. That's the name of this man she hates so much that she calls a thug.
All right. Well, we've heard from a bunch of Republicans. Let's check in on the Democrats. Surely now Trump has launched this illegal war. Civilians are being slaughtered. It's unpopular. Surely we can count on our Democratic leaders to stand up and say, no more.
Yeah.
We will not take part in this. Not on our watch. Well, if you were expecting that from House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, you're in for a disappointment. Here he is.
Their lives are at risk.
Let's talk about the cost of this war, Leader Jeffries. The White House is reportedly weighing a request to Congress for tens of millions of dollars. Several Senate Democrats have said they're open to reviewing what the administration requests, arguing it could be critical to military readiness overall. As the leader of House Democrats, do you plan to block all Pentagon funding, even if the argument is it is critical for military readiness?
Yes. Can you imagine him just saying, yes, I am?
Yeah.
Because this war is illegal. It's disastrous. It's the act of aggression. We should have no part in it. Very simple answer. Yes, I will block it.
Yeah. Let's hear it. I'm sure he's going to say something like that, right?
Survey says.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it in terms of if the administration makes a request to Congress to consider additional funding.
Thank you.
Why doesn't he run on that? He should run on that. We will cross that bridge when we come to it. If the regime, if the government makes a request for additional funding.
Yeah, that's their midterm message, Democrats. Yeah. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Oh my God, that is so ridiculous.
I'm sorry to laugh.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry to laugh because this is a horrible time.
Bad answers, not bravery. Avoidance, not assuredness. Going to call back to his wonderful book.
Yes,
wonderful
his ABC speech.
Yeah.
Yes.
He should make a book next should be a book of slogans for the next, moving America forward with great slogans. Like, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah.
Or another great one from him is, we just want ICE to act the way that other armed agencies act.
Okay. That's the Keith Jeffries. Again, we're going to hear a slightly better answer from, again, Senator Chris Murphy.
Yeah.
And it's reportedly weighing Congress to approve an additional $50 billion in funding for these operations. You have said you're a hell no, not just a no, on funding the war. We have seen this movie before. We know that vote will be cast as, especially if you run for higher office, you voting against the troops.
Oh, come on.
That's like the equivalent of some people say.
Yeah, exactly. Some people say that if you won't fund another regime change war on Israel's behalf, you're against the troops.
Yeah. Some people say if you don't fund a war that's going to put soldiers at risk for an illegal war, that's really anti-troops. It would be really pro-troops to send more soldiers off to their deaths.
Yeah. Now, listen, maybe Jake Tapper was just actually setting up a good answer from Chris Murphy here, because, look, it is a fair question to ask if you're a journalist. Like, this is how this is normally characterized if you vote against the war, that you're against the troops. What do you say to that? Like, and then, but the problem is, because it's Jake Tapper, who is a pro-Israel activist, it's really hard to believe that this was a question in good faith, not one of these kind of like snitch questions. Like, you're against the troops if you vote against war funding. But anyway,
I mean, I also wonder though if I thought the same thing. I was like, is this a fair question? Is this a good way to set it up? But even just accepting that framing, you're reinforcing it, right?
Yeah.
Like I actually think it's a more, if there's a huge splash where like people are calling him that, yeah, maybe you give him the chance to respond to it. But I kind of think doing it preemptively is ridiculous because there is the power of suggestion. Like if you don't mention it, let his adversaries mention it and then he can respond to it.
We've seen this playbook before, and I'm going to parrot it, which is that you're against the troops.
Right.
How do you respond?
And also, I mean, it is such a ridiculous talking point that it should, if you're going to even bring it up, I really think you have the responsibility to explain why it's ridiculous. You could say something like, we've seen this playbook before where the people who are sending people off to war unnecessarily, ironically, accuse those of you who oppose the war of being anti-troops. Another way to do it. Or he could have asked.
I mean, the American people don't want this war. They don't want this war. They have seen what happens when American troops go into places like Iraq, places like Afghanistan. Ultimately, we get a lot of people killed. We waste a lot of dollars. The one thing the American people are clear about is that they do not want the United States dragged into another long-term war in the Middle East. If you support the troops, then you should be voting against funding this war so that we get our troops out of harm's way. Virtually nothing good happened from sending thousands of Americans to die inside Iraq in the 2000s. And if we don't learn that lesson, then shame on every single one of us.
So he's basically saying, look, if you care about the PR fallout from this, don't worry, because no one wants this war, which is a good point. I mean, he'll get attacked by bad faith actors and warmongers, but.
Yeah, but at least he's saying, which is rare for someone in Washington, that if we want to support the troops, don't send them off to these awful wars,
Exactly.
And yeah, imagine if Democrats could have said that during the Iraq War, when instead, when they were accused of not supporting the troops, they all fell in line. Like, no, we do support the troops. That's why here, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, here's more money to go destroy a country.
Right.
Okay. Well, look, we had to warm up to this guy because he is just so unhinged and so evil that we couldn't give him to you at the start of the show. But we do have to listen to him because, unfortunately, he is arguably one of the most influential people in the world right now, and that is Senator Lindsey Graham. He's been pining for this regime change war in Iran for decades. He's finally gotten it, and he is fired up. But, of course, because he is an unhinged warmonger, he does not want to stop at just the U.S. and Israel bombing Iran. He wants an even bigger war. So here he is speaking to Fox News.
Better secure the Strait of Hormuz so that we don't see more spikes in the price of oil. Number two, are you telling us you want the United Arab Emirates and the Saudis to lash out and strike Iran right now?
I want them to get in the fight. We sell them weapons. Iran is striking their country. They have good capability. About the Strait of Hormuz, what if the regime fell? Then you never had anybody in Iran in the future that wants to close.
Okay, I like this. He's doing some weird time travel. Listen to the tenses. What if the regime fell, then you never had? It sounds like he's trying to go back in time, which is not how actually wars work. It's good for sci-fi, but
then you never had anybody in Iran in the future that wants to close the strait. What if you had Iran with people who don't want to build a nuclear weapon to kill us all? What if you had Iran in the future that doesn't support Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis? That's where we're headed. Donald J. Trump is going to bring this terrorist regime down. We're going to have partners in Iran, and we're going to open up a gateway to peace. This won't fix itself. Every other president has talked about doing it. President Trump is in the process of doing it. They're going to lose, and we're going to win. Israel and the United States, you just wait to see what comes in the next 2 weeks.
So what he's bragging about there is he wants a future Iran that doesn't resist Israeli and U.S. aggression. That's why they've been trying to destroy Iran for 47 years, is because it's outside of U.S. control. That's why, for example, in the 80s, people like Lindsey Graham were cheering on the U.S. supporting Saddam Hussein, a total war criminal, as he killed hundreds of thousands of people in Iran, including with chemical weapons.
Supplied by us in many cases, the weapons.
Because, we supplied the intelligence that was used to use the chemical weapons. It was the European vassal states that technically supplied the precursors. But yeah, it was done with our support. And that's why he wants to destroy Iran, because Iran supports groups in the region that resist Israeli aggression. So he's envisioning a world where nobody would dare resist the Jewish supremacist state that's caused such havoc throughout West Asia. And that's the future he's pining for. And now he wants Gulf allies of the U.S. to get involved in the fight to help out the U.S. and Israel, because he wants to see basically any kind of relationship between Iran and the Gulf states totally destroyed for good, so that Israel and the U.S. can dominate with even a freer hand.
Yeah, and I like it because he's not even pretending that this is like something solemn where people are going to die. It's just he's so war happy. It's like an antidepressant for him or something. It's actually quite sick. But let's see what he has to say about what's going to happen in 2 weeks.
The next 2 weeks, meaning what?
What?
We're going to blow the hell out of these people. This regime is in a death row now. It is going to be on its knees. It's going to fall. And when it falls, we're going to have peace like no other time. We're going to have prosperity unlike anyone could ever imagine. Peace brings prosperity. You can't do it by talking. The Democrats criticize this operation. They didn't do a damn thing. These men and women in the military should make us all proud.
I've never heard someone talk so violently about having peace. We're going to have peace.
Yeah, it's just so evil. And of course,
Bloodlust,
he's not giving Democrats credit, because it's true. Listen, Obama did do the Iran nuclear deal, and he deserves credit. He does deserve actual credit for that, not Lindsey Graham's warmongering credit.
Right.
But Democrats also assisted warmongering by supporting the proxy war in Syria, which was aimed in part at bleeding Iran and its allies, because Syria was a part of the axis that resists Israel. They also bombed Libya, which was another state that was not in control, which was another state that was outside of U.S. and Israeli control. So that was Obama. So Democrats have done plenty to help out Lindsey's warmongering. It's true they're not as unhinged warmongers as Lindsey Graham is, but certainly.
But Biden didn't return to the nuclear deal, for instance.
Biden certainly did not. That's a great point. Biden could have returned to his own administration's nuclear deal, and he did not, because he is more of a warmonger in the Lindsey Graham vein than he is a peacemaker.
Right.
So Lindsey Graham really should be crediting his Democratic ally.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, more Lindsey Graham, unfortunately.
$1 billion a day. Oil prices up 27% in a week. You've got the president wanting a $1.5 trillion defense budget in 27. The idea that the Pentagon is about to come to you for $50 billion on these strikes to Iran. How are you going to answer?
Best money ever spent. Was it worth to America to take down a religious Nazi regime who's trying to build a nuclear weapon to deliver to America? That's a really good investment.
So first of all, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. Trump's own intelligence agencies have affirmed that. So he's just lying through his teeth, and that lie is something you can say on corporate TV with no pushback. There is a religious Nazi regime in the region, and actually they do have nuclear weapons.
Yes.
It's called Israel, because they're a Jewish supremacist state that has an illegal nuclear weapons program that's so illegal they won't even acknowledge it.
Right.
We won't even acknowledge it either.
And you have Israelis, by the way, and I'm not talking about like refuseniks. You actually have Israelis who are some former soldiers, some former high-ranking military officials who are comparing what they're doing now to the Nazis.
Yeah, and by the way, when he says it's the best money we've ever spent, well, he previously said that about the Ukraine proxy war. So, sorry, Ukraine proxy war. Bombing Iran, destroying it, this now takes the cake when it comes to the best money we've ever spent. Better even than using Ukraine to kill Russian soldiers.
I hope Zelensky was sitting down when he heard that.
Yeah. Sad news for Zelensky. Okay, I'm sorry. One more Lindsey Graham clip after this.
By the way, guys,
do
you
business.
have to like this. Do you understand? We had to watch more Lindsey Graham than you have to pick these. So if you haven't given this a thumbs up, you are helping algorithmic suppression, and the bad guys win. All right, let's go back to Lindsey, a bad guy.
They will do business. Trump's a man of peace and business. Finally, Venezuela and Iran have 31% of the world's oil reserves. We're going to have a partnership with 31% of the known reserves. This is China's nightmare. This is a good investment, and we should applaud our.
Okay, so there we go. We're also doing this so we can steal more oil,
right?
So we can go after China. I mean, I've never seen such brazen
Power.
admissions that we're just like that. This is just like we're just living under a mafia racket.
Yeah.
This is like what mafias do: is they steal other people's resources, they use violence to achieve their ends. I mean, to go after their rivals. I mean, it's just all mafia talk. But
Right.
I've never seen it laid out so plainly. I mean, at least with the Bush administration, they pretended there was Iraq WMDs, and then
Exactly.
when that didn't pan out, there was also the Saddam was working with Al Qaeda. That also wasn't true. And then they were saying, okay, fine, we're spreading freedom and democracy.
Right. Exactly.
Lindsey Graham is saying we're stealing oil and we're going to dominate the world, and there's nothing anybody can do about it.
He has like a more hybrid approach, right? Because he's lying about their nuclear weapons. He's lying about there being religious Nazis, but then he also has he's also being a realist. So he's all the bases covered.
All right, let's hear from another Republican senator, Senator John Kennedy. I think he thinks he's so charming and folksy because he's got, that like
Southern accent,
that Southern good old boy charm. But anyway, let's hear what he has to say and whether it's any more palatable than Lindsey Graham.
That's why I say President Trump didn't. He's not trying to start a war. He's trying to prevent a war. He tried negotiating with the Ayatollah. The Ayatollah said,
"Make that make sense." Trump is not starting a war. He's trying to prevent a war by starting a war.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a Jedi mind trick.
There's some future war that was going to happen if Trump didn't start a war now. And based on what? Iran can't even hit the U.S. even if it wanted to.
Right.
Like all that destruction and terror that we're bringing to Iran, we're doing that because Iran can't do that to us.
Right.
Because Iran has deliberately limited the range of its missiles for exactly this reason. So they can't give the U.S. a pretext to say we have to take out Iran because they can hit us. So Iran can't even hit the U.S. But yet somehow people like Kennedy are saying it's Iran that is the aggressor while we're destroying their country.
Yep. Well, Aaron, I'm actually very excited because I am just realizing watching this that there's a book that I think we should buy. Maybe we could start a Useful Idiots reading club. You see in the background how to test negative for stupid and why Washington never will. A senator's funny and perceptive takedown of Washington politics. That sounds like a great book and good product placement. Yeah.
Yes.
Good, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We haven't come around to covering that one yet, but
yeah,
maybe we can get Senator Ken. Yeah, I don't like interviewing politicians, really. I think it's kind of a waste of time, but I'd make an exception for Senator John Kennedy.
I think talk about his book also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be more of a book review. Yeah.
no to everything except lunch. What's our plan? I'll tell you what our plan is. We all heard it in the classified briefing. He tried negotiating with the Ayatollah. The Ayatollah said no to everything except lunch.
Oh, well, that's nice to accept lunch.
Yeah, the Ayatollah, first of all, it wasn't the Ayatollah who was negotiating. It was the Iranian foreign minister. Oh. And they agreed to terms that were more favorable to the U.S. than the nuclear deal, the one that Trump tore up.
Right.
So that's another lie from John Kennedy. Iran agreed to basically even stricter caps on its nuclear program that was done under Obama, because the nuclear deal, the JCPOA that Trump tore up, that had a sunset clause. So its terms are going to expire. Iran was willing to make it essentially permanent forever. And the U.S. heard that. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff heard that and said, yeah, these guys don't want to negotiate. Let's go to war.
Right.
Because Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who aren't diplomats, they're just, in Jared Kushner's case, his son-in-law, and in Witkoff's case, his golfing buddy, they were there to pretend to be diplomats. That's actually what happened.
Yep. But
we talked about that with, if you caught our live stream on Friday, we talked about that with Trita Parsi. So for all the details on that, go check that out. But anyway, I just, lie after lie from Senator John Kennedy.
Yeah. Our plan, I'll tell you what our plan is. We all heard it in the classified briefing. Our plan is to destroy the Iranian Navy, destroy the Iranian Air Force, destroy their facilities through which they're making missiles and drones, destroy the infrastructure for the Revolutionary Guard and other parts.
He had to correct himself there. Destroy the infrastructure, and then he's like, "Oh wait, that doesn't sound very good." For the Revolutionary Guard, for the military, right. When really, actually, they are destroying the infrastructure, the civil infrastructure, water desalination plants, energy infrastructure. That's actually what they're doing. And by the way, like when you talk there about destroying Iran's air force, this underscores that Iran is not a threat at all to U.S. because Iran barely has an air force.
Right.
So there's not even much to destroy. So what he's really saying is we just need to destroy this country because, again, as we talked about, they're a country that is outside of our control and that doesn't accept U.S. Israeli domination of the region. And that's why their paltry air force and everything else and their oil infrastructure and their water plants have to be destroyed.
Yeah. And, you know, just going back to the idea that this was a negotiation that the Ayatollah, which again, it wasn't even the Ayatollah, but refused to engage in and said no to everything except lunch. This wasn't a negotiation. This was openly delivering ultimata from Witkoff and Trump. And remember, even Witkoff said, Trump's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why, under the sort of pressure with the amount of sea power and naval power that we have over there, why haven't they come to us and said, we profess we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do. So even the very administration that he's describing admitted that it wasn't real negotiation. It was mafiosa.
That's right.
A shakedown.
Parts of the military. We're going to turn parts of Iran, those who are enemies, into fish food and then get out. I do not believe.
We're going to turn parts of Iran into fish food. He thinks that's so charming and folksy. Ha, ha, ha. He's talking about a country of 90 million
sandwich.
People. He's talking about a country of 90 million people. It's an openly genocidal statement. And
yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Funny and charming.
Genocidal gumbo.
The president will send in troops. In fact, if he sends in troops, the thud you hear will be me face planting because I fainted. I think this will all take.
Ha ha ha. So again, he's not face planting and fainting because we're slaughtering a bunch of civilians. He will faint if Trump sends in U.S. troops, which he's confident he won't do because as he's laid out, Trump will spend his energy actually just destroying Iran from the sky,
exactly.
which the U.S. and Israel can do, and that's what they're very good at.
Yeah,
and slaughtering a bunch of schoolgirls.
Yeah,
that's what he's talking about. That's what he means by fish food.
So disgusting.
So
a matter of weeks, and after we are done, it'll be up to the good people, and they are good people of Iran, to try to
some of which will become fish food, unfortunately.
Overthrow these knobheads who are in charge now.
Well, all of this comes at a cost. The human cost. There's a financial.
He's calling someone else knobheads as he's talking about destroying a country and turning it into fish food.
Right.
I mean, and they say, yeah, after we're done destroying your country, then it'll be up to the good people of Iran. So after we're done destroying your infrastructure, filling your atmosphere with toxic air, it'll be up to you.
Yeah.
It'll be up to you. And you're the knobheads, by the way. And you're the ones ruled by knobheads, not us. Okay, but now he's going to get to a question that will come up soon, and we've talked about, which is, okay, if Trump comes to Congress to ask for, it's rumored to be $50 billion in supplemental war funding, how is Congress going to respond?
Cost as well, which Senator Warner touched on. And there are questions now about the administration coming to Capitol Hill with a supplemental request for this. One of your colleagues was asked about that, Senator Lisa Murkowski, who sits on the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. She says the administration should not be taking anything for granted. If they come to us at the end of the month and say, this is what we want, and basically you deliver the votes, it's not a winning strategy, in my view. You've got to start making the case. How do you see that playing out?
Well, Senator Murkowski is my friend and colleague, but she's a minority. Congress, at least the Republicans in Congress, are not going to let us falter in achieving our objective because we run out of money. I think right now our military has plenty of money and they have plenty of ammunition. This business about we're running out of ammunition is foolishness. It's foolishness on a stick.
Well, before any of that.
So don't worry, everybody. There's endless money for another regime change war in West Asia. There's no money to give people health care, decent jobs, pay teachers a reasonable salary. There's plenty of money to go turn Iran into fish food.
Yeah. And by the way, it's clear that Senator Kennedy has read his own book because he definitely tested negative for stupid during that interview.
All right. Well, as Senators Lindsey Graham and Kennedy John Kennedy brag about destroying Iran and stealing its resources and say, don't worry about the money. There'll be plenty for it. Now the Trump administration is not even ruling out a military draft to send U.S. soldiers off to die. We heard Senator Kennedy say there that if Trump sends in U.S. troops to Iran, he will face plant. Well, the Trump administration isn't ruling that out. This is the White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt.
Someone needs to put padded floors, pillows on the floor in Kennedy's office.
Out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be, and President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table.
So are you going to mass murder a bunch of people? Well, luckily, the president keeps all options on the table.
Yeah, and will you send U.S. troops off to die to
do
the bidding of Israel? Well, we're going to keep that option on the table. They're not even ruling out a military draft. And this is yet one more case of J.D. Vance looking like a complete chump, because look at what he was telling audiences back when he was running for vice president.
Yeah.
Guidance to those young men. And I think their concerns are very legitimate. But if you're worried about the world spinning out of control, if you're worried about a military draft, if you're worried about, God forbid, a world war, the best way to prevent it is to vote for Donald Trump. And I really believe that.
If you're worried about a military draft, if you're worried about a war, the best way to prevent that is to vote for Donald Trump, who will launch a war and now is putting a military draft on the table. Great job, J.D. Vance.
Right.
Great job.
Absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Okay. Let's turn to, the Trump administration's partners in all of this. They deserve a chance to speak because, after all, they're directly involved along with Trump. And essentially, they're running this war along with Trump, to the point where Trump the other day said that if he's going to stop the war, he'd first have to consult with Benjamin Netanyahu. And again, I know that J.D. Vance was on the presidential ticket back when they ran, and J.D. Vance was lying and saying that Trump was going to stop wars. But I didn't know that Benjamin Netanyahu was Trump's co-president, because that's pretty much the way Trump is acting now.
Right.
But the Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Leiter, what are his thoughts?
U.S. assessment from the secretary there, he said this is just a matter of weeks.
We believe so. We're seeing cracks in the edifice of this military security terror regime. They're starting to have very grave difficulties in conveying orders down through the system. There's arguments within the system about the appointment of a successor to the supreme leader. They're having grave difficulties. The fact that they're lashing out irrationally.
Yeah, there's arguments about the appointment of the successor. They just appointed Khamenei's son.
Right.
So they're having total continuity. And he's saying they're falling apart. They're bickering, they're arguing. No, they just actually appointed the Ayatollah's son, which you couldn't get a more clear message of continuity and cohesion, I think. From
unless he would cloned him, or unless he had a twin, maybe. But yeah, this is pretty close.
To all of their neighbors and firing these ballistic missiles into all of their neighbors, some 12 countries, into Europe, for crying out loud, is indicative of the fact they're having huge problems. We're having success in these attacks on their command centers.
Again, framing these attacks on American bases as some kind of evidence that they're having a meltdown.
Yeah, he's like, the fact that Iran is hitting U.S. military bases in surrounding countries is, to the Israeli ambassador, evidence that Iran is wilding out. They're going crazy. They can't control themselves. And then he says they're bringing this to Europe. He means Cyprus.
Yeah.
Which technically is in Europe, but it's in Iran's neighborhood. And there's a UK military base there. And the UK, despite Keir Starmer's sort of wavering, his waffling, is a part of the coalition that is attacking Iran. And so Iran hit a base there. That's what he means by Europe.
Yeah, and it's such a lie, by the way. It's not like these guys don't get it. I mean, some guys don't get it. Remember, like we watched on our Friday free for all, our live Friday free for all last week. We saw Dave Rubin and Jon Stewart. They literally don't get why Iran is attacking the places they're attacking. They don't get it's because of U.S. bases. But this guy, all politicians, maybe Trump doesn't, honestly, but know exactly why they're doing this. They understand that it's because of U.S. bases. So they're obfuscating. They're intentionally trying to make it sound like a ridiculous thing to do.
Jon Stewart's jokes about this were some of the lamest things I've ever seen from him. I mean, look, there was a time he did a friendly sit down with Condoleezza Rice and Hillary Clinton.
Oh, and Ashcroft.
And
another one, yeah.
He did not too long ago. He did a friendly interview with Condoleezza Rice and Hillary Clinton. Just sat there and nodded as they parroted all these pro-war talking points.
Right.
And I just, I love the guy. He's so important. But sometimes when it comes to issues of war and peace, he really just drops the ball. And him joking about like Iran,
being a bar fight.
Yeah, exactly. Him pretending not to understand why Iran would hit U.S. military bases in surrounding countries that was very disappointing.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, let's get back to the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Michael Leiter, more deep thoughts from him.
The Prime Minister gave an address Saturday and said to the IRGC, to those who lay down their arms, no harm shall come. To those who do not, their blood is on their own heads. If there are no Israeli ground forces, who do you want the IRGC to surrender to? How does that work?
There are many precedents in history where the people themselves, like Romania, they turned their guns around against Ceausescu. When people are deprived of freedom, there's a certain point where they say enough. And all they have to do is put down their weapons and not participate. Look, they don't have to participate when the people rise up in shooting their own civilians, their own neighbors, their own families in many cases. Mm-hmm. So look, the objective here is to achieve a situation where Iran is no longer an exporter of terrorism, is no longer raining ballistic missiles down on its neighbors, and is no longer in the pursuit of nuclear weapons. That's achievable. And
if only that could happen inside Israel, if only the soldiers there could have put down their weapons and not shot innocent people in the West Bank and Gaza rather than commit genocide. If only that could be the case in Israel. And of course, Israel could give up its actual nuclear weapons as opposed to the fictional nuclear weapons program that Iran has.
Right. Also, Romania, like that's how far back he has to go. 1989, Romania's revolution in 1989. He's like picking, it happens other places randomly. The last example we can think of that's remotely comparable would be 1989, Romania.
Yeah, and the fact that he even has to fantasize about this right now, more than a week into this latest Israeli-U.S. attack on Iran, speaks to how just colonially arrogant they are. They really thought, because they're such racists, that the Iranians are going to turn against each other and just bow down to their masters after a few bombs. And actually, people have self-respect. And even though things right now in Iran are really difficult and they're about to get a lot worse, and sure, even though there is plenty of grievances with the government there, as there is with any government around the world, people actually have some dignity, and they're not going to take orders from these like racist, raving lunatics in Tel Aviv and Washington telling Iran to capitulate and basically give up its sovereignty. People actually fight for their sovereignty, and that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's hear from another Israeli, the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Mourning.
You have concerns at this point?
First of all, always good to be with you, Martha. And yes, it's the latest war. It's actually the continuation of the war that began on October 7th, 2023. And there's direct connection between Hamas.
Okay, so keep that in mind, because now we're hearing that the war began on October 7th. Other people we've heard on the show so far have said this began 47 years ago.
Right.
Michael Mourning he's a little more self-involved. He's looking at this from the Israeli perspective.
Right.
So he thinks this began on October 7th, even though, of course, October 7th did not begin anything. October 7th came after more than 7 decades of Israeli ethnic cleansing and occupation of Palestinians.
Right.
But and also, if he's trying to draw this to Iran had no idea about October 7th. As
they were
so
shocked
obvious.
by it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But even if Iran did know about October 7th, it still wouldn't have started then, because October 7th was simply a response to Israeli occupation and a refusal to end it.
Yeah, maybe they were right about the 40s, but that would have been 1948.
Well, we're going to hear someone try to actually date this back to the 40s soon enough. But let's hear
I meant like the 47. I was trying to, So the options are 47 or 10-7.
Yeah. Exactly.
47 years, 10-7. Yeah.
Exactly.
Attack on the southern Israel and what's going on now. And yes, I have concerns because in many ways, the Iranian regime is a lot like Hamas. In order
Hamas, I like that. Hamas. I haven't heard that. Okay. It's almost like has a Lindsey Graham. Even Lindsey Graham doesn't call it that.
to win, they have only not to lose. And at the end of the day, they really don't care how many casualties line up.
Well, he is right in that this is an existential war for Iran.
It's weird. These savages don't want to lose.
I know,
to
it's
us.
so weird.
It's strange. Like they're similar that way. These barbarians.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who are from
They
this
want
region that was
sovereignty and they don't want people to be killed.
Yeah.
And they won't lay down their arms and let us invade and colonize them. It's weird. It must be a Muslim thing.
We're a bunch of white Europeans who came in to their region and said we have a biblical right to Palestine, and according to Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador, everywhere.
Right.
And for some reason, they just haven't surrendered yet. It's strange.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And they have a 3,000-year-old civilization, and we have a 5-year-old in comparison civilization. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the indigenous people have been, but America, United States,
what kind of destruction is caused. If they can emerge from the rubble at the end and do a V sign, then they've won. And so it's very difficult. And
disgusting.
If they can do the victory sign of defeating colonists who are bent on their destruction, and he finds it so exotic, it's so strange the way the way they behave, that if they cannot be slaughtered by us and survive, then they'll do a V sign. It's weird. Why do they bow down?
Right.
And accept that a Jewish settler from Brooklyn can come and steal the home of Palestinians who have lived there for centuries. It's, the hubris and the arrogance. How, and if you're an interviewer, how are you just sitting there nodding your head yes. I guess it takes one to know one,
Yeah. I mean, and it is really disgusting. They know all about the rubble, right? Because this is a guy whose government has just overseen a genocide.
Yep.
And the rubble that under which there are still Palestinian bodies, and he's making cutesy talking points about rubble.
But they're so out of touch, and their connection to reality is so warped that they say stuff in order to win they just don't have to lose. Well, that's called not losing. They don't want to lose because they don't accept your rule over their region.
Right.
It's so foreign to people like Michael Oren because he just accepts, along with the corporate media journalist interviewing him, that Israel has the right to just dominate the region. And how strange it is for anyone to resist that. Okay, I can't take any more of his voice. So
by the way, he's very brave, Michael Oren. He was born in the States and he moved to Israel. And he's won awards for rowing in the Maccabee Games. He's a rower.
Okay, let's turn to the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Rick Crawford, because we've heard already, we've been at war with Iran since 1979. We've heard we've been at war actually since October 7th. Rick Crawford has a new date for us.
We had been at war with Iran since 1947. That was the predicate of what you're seeing today. And finally, we have a president that says, not on my watch, we're going to do it. And end this regime and clear that Strait of Hormuz and make sure that the oil flows to the rest of the world is an important.
So, according to Rick Crawford, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, we've been at war actually with Iran since 1947, which is news to me. And in fact, around that time, far from being at war, Iran and the U.S. were cooperating because this was after World War II. The U.S. was emerging as the world's top hegemon, and we were trying to control everywhere, especially the Middle East. And Iran was a client for that until they made the mistake of having a popular leader come in, Mossadegh, who tried to take control of their oil. And then in 1953, as you talked about earlier, Katie, the CIA backed a coup there. So 1947, I think he's confusing there the 47 years. We've been at war with around 47 years, and he's turned that into 1947. And in fairness to him, this was just a slip up because just a few days ago, as we're going to see in the next clip, he got the talking point right.
Yeah, exactly. Short-term gain, short-term pain, long-term gain, 47 years. It's all in the memo.
Control Israel's foreign policy, but we do control ours.
And I think that's what you've seen this administration do. Understanding that this case has been made for 47 years. We've been at war with Iran for 47 years.
All right, so there you go. Okay, so we got it there. Not 1947, but it was just a funny slip up.
It was,
the talking points are hard to capture. Okay.
By the way, I just want to say one thing that I forgot to say about Oren, because Michael Oren, I got so excited about his rowing awards. But do you know what his name was before he changed it? What name he was born with? It wasn't Oren. He was born Bornstein. And he had to change his name to sound Israeli because he's such a fraud. And that means pine tree in Hebrew.
Yeah. Like Netanyahu. His
Melanowski or something.
Yeah.
Just so
okay. All right. Let's move ahead to we're going to go back to the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz. And again, if there's one thing that can maybe get liberals on board with Trump's war, it's the news, and I don't know if it's true or not, but maybe it is, that Russia, heaven forbid, is helping Iran target U.S. troops by giving intelligence. And imagine a country doing that, even though, of course, the U.S. has been doing that to Russia in Ukraine for a very, very long time. But if Russia is doing that with Iran, then they got to go. And I guess Democrats might give up any apprehensions they have about Trump's war.
To help target U.S. assets in the region, will there be consequences for Russia?
Well, as Special Envoy Witkoff said last night on Air Force One, he sent a very strong message to Russia. I have no doubt President Trump will deal with it accordingly.
Will there be consequences,
if this is happening,
though,
and I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into intelligence, but I'll tell you what, Russia right now has just lost its main supplier of these one-way drones that they have been sending in night after night into Ukraine. They just lost their main supplier of ballistic missiles. President Trump has taken incredibly decisive action in finally sanctioning both Rosneft and Lukoil, the main energy suppliers. That's a main form of revenue going into Russia. So no one can argue that he hasn't taken tough measures, and will continue if he decides to do so as commander-in-chief.
If Russia's giving Iran intelligence, do you effectively consider that Russia has entered this conflict?
Well, we know that.
She's like, her fingers are crossed because we'd love to have an even bigger world war than we're currently having. Like, is Russia involved? Is Russia officially our adversary in this conflict too? So can we go after them? This is another example of what we call adversarial warmongering.
Exactly. Yeah. Can you please tell us something we can get excited about? Maybe, if people are worried about how devastating this war will be, at least we'll get to fight with our traditional enemy of Russia.
Both Russia and Iran have had this symbiotic relationship, number one. Number two, if they are providing anything, it certainly hasn't been very effective because the U.S. military is decimating Iran's Air Force, air defenses, Navy, ground forces, command and control. So whatever they're providing, if they're providing anything, hasn't shown to help them very much.
Two more, and we have about a minute left. The Treasury.
Okay, so there we go. Can we please widen this war? That's the adversarial questioning we're now getting from Meet the Depressed, because they're really excited at this idea that Russia might be involved too. I mean, this is what happens when you have proxy wars. They spill over to other places too. And the Ukraine proxy war is now spilling over to the Iran war. And where is this going? Well, someone I'd love to hear from on this is the guy who bragged right before October 7th of how quiet everything is. He said the Middle East has never been more quiet, and that's because I'm such a strategic genius. And I'm talking about Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, the guy who not only oversaw Israel's genocide in Gaza, Biden's support for that genocide, but also the Ukraine proxy war, where the Biden administration blocked multiple opportunities for peace. And what are his thoughts right now? Well, Fareed Zakaria brought him on CNN.
I'm back with Jake Sullivan, who served as National Security Advisor in the Biden administration. Jake, when President Trump was asked what he made of the fact that Russia was now providing material intelligence support about targeting and information on where U.S. troops were to the Iranians, he said he thought that was a stupid question. I'm not sure I understand. If it turns out that Russia is actually participating in a sense in the war, isn't that a big deal?
Oh, it's a huge deal. And I think his answer kind of tells you everything you need to know, because he didn't want to answer that question. So he lashed back, and he didn't want to answer the question because it raises a deeply uncomfortable truth. Russia is an adversary of the United States. They're an adversary who reportedly is actually supplying intelligence so that Iran can pinpoint locations where U.S. service members are present, or where U.S. capabilities, like our most sophisticated air defense radars, are present.
AKA what the U.S. has done to Russia and Ukraine, which goes unmentioned here. So basically, if this is true that Russia is doing this, and again, I don't know if it is or not, because you always have to take these stories with a grain of salt, then Russia will be doing exactly what Jake Sullivan was overseeing in Ukraine, which is pinpointing the locations of Russian troops, giving the intelligence to Ukraine, and overseeing the targets. Basically, the U.S. did everything in Ukraine except for press the button firing the weapon, but it located Russian targets, showed them to Ukraine, and gave Ukraine the weapons to fire them, and then Ukraine just pressed the button. So essentially, whatever Russia is doing in terms of cooperation with Iran, I think it pales in comparison to what the U.S. was doing, helping Ukraine kill Russians, both inside Ukraine and in Russia, because recall that Ukraine has launched strikes against targets inside Russia, including oil infrastructure, and why not Russia's nuclear triad, when you had that Operation Spider's Web, when Ukraine bombed Russian bases hosting its nuclear fleet. Why not?
And Iran has, in some cases, been able to hit those capabilities. So this is a huge deal, and it's just one piece of the way in which Vladimir Putin is trying to take advantage of this war. He's looking at rising oil prices.
Putin. It always comes back to Putin.
Yeah. Putin. Yeah.
As Nancy Pelosi said, all roads lead to Putin, including the Iran war. This is somehow, I guess, like he's working his devilish ways to take advantage of the Iran war. Always count on Democrats to bring it back to Putin.
Yeah, this is the important Chiron, the important message. Will war in Iran embolden Russia?
Yes.
That's the only important part. By the way, I like that. It is quite perfect that Jake Sullivan now has the Kissinger Professor of the Practice of Statecraft and World Order at Harvard Kennedy School. That's his new position.
Yes.
Kissinger.
Yes. Why not? Yeah.
Appropriate.
But to the credit of the students, they protested him from the start. Like when he got the job, there was a lot of outrage, and when he does public events, he still faces adversarial questioning, unlike what he gets on corporate TV when everyone's kissing his feet as some kind of strategic genius, even though he presided over Israel's genocide and the Ukraine proxy war. Really impressive resume there from Jake Sullivan. Okay, we're going to skip ahead. We're almost done the show. This has been a very extended episode of East Monday Morning, because there's just so much propaganda for us to debunk. But thank you to our producer, Matt Wilson, for putting all this together and for working extra hours. Let's turn to Republican Congress member Nancy Mace. She has a unique take on this war that is killing Iranian civilians, including children, and poisoning their air. But she thinks this is freedom.
Mm-hmm. Now, 60 to 90 days from now, do we want to reassess where we are and make some decisions? Potentially. But we are 7 days into this conflict. We are seeing a shakedown and an elimination of a regime who's the most violent regime coming out of the Middle East.
Shakedown is actually a pretty good word. That's a mafia tactic, shakedown. They are trying to shake down Iran by forcing them to surrender their resources and their sovereignty. So, shakedown actually is, it's kind of accurate.
Yeah.
Except it's being done with like the most sophisticated weapons in the world, not just like a normal mafia tactics of like slapping someone around or beating them with a club or whatever mafia people do.
Right. And it's poisoning people.
Maybe using a gun. This is like bringing Tomahawk missiles to destroy schools and slaughter children.
That's an advanced shakedown.
Not only did they kill thousands of Americans, tens of thousands of their own people just in the last few weeks and few months, political prisoners and women. But it's ironic to me, Mike, that the Protect Palestine crowd is mad that we're freeing Iranian women right now. I don't understand it at all. It's hypocritical and it's dangerous. Their rhetoric is dangerous.
So Nancy Mace, how about we free you the same way? You want to get freed the same way that the Iranian women are getting freed?
Well, I mean, yeah. So what you're saying is, like we're freeing people from being alive. That's how we're freeing the Iranian women. Is we're freeing them from their right to live. And that's freedom, according to Nancy Mace. Yes, to her, it's ironic that the people who protested Israel's genocide in Gaza aren't protesting Iran for defending itself. It's people who protest mass murder in Palestine are also going to protest mass murder by the U.S. and Israel and Iran. It's actually very consistent. I don't know what she's talking about.
People and U.S. citizens who don't want their government funding genocide of Palestinians likewise don't want their government killing Iranians. It's weird. See, if you cared about life, which she doesn't because she thinks that freedom is death, she would get it.
All right. Well, look, the Trump administration and allies' talking points are so moronic, so transparently evil that they're forcing, and this has got to hurt him, even people like Jake Tapper, who normally is on board with promoting every U.S.-Israeli act of aggression, to at least pretend to pay lip service to being adversarial. And Jake Tapper, to press his case, put together a little monologue.
Let's be clear. It is the news media's responsibility to cover this war, not to cheerlead for it. It is our responsibility to ask questions of government officials, especially when the lives of American service members are on the line, especially when civilians abroad, whether in Iran or Israel or anywhere else, are being.
He's got to throw in Israel. He's got to throw in Israel. Yes. The civilians in Israel are equally threatened by all this as the people of Iran or, say, Gaza, which, of course, he can't even mention.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, right. I mean, again, my standards are so low that the fact that he even referred to civilians in Iran, I was like, are you kidding? Wow. Yeah. He's probably watching Useful Idiots.
No, he's doing this through gritted teeth. He doesn't want to be doing all this, but the problem is the Trump administration, they're so incoherent. They couldn't get all the various lies straight about why they went to war. First, it was Iran was about to hit U.S. troops, and then when the Pentagon briefed Congress, they had to admit that was not true. Then it was what Marco Rubio said, well, Israel was going to hit, and then we knew that if Israel hit, then Iran would retaliate, so we had to go in. Then they walked that back, and then Trump said, they're about 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. That's why we had to hit 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon as part of a nuclear weapons program that they don't even have. So anyway, it's been so incoherent. The lies are so ridiculously false and transparently dumb, and the atrocities are so immediate. Like one of their first acts was killing a bunch of school children, that even Jake Tapper has to pretend now to be adversarial.
Yeah.
Oh, and also they were so contemptuous of U.S. service members that when Pete Hegseth was asked about the U.S. troops that have killed so far, Pete Hegseth said, "You're just saying this to make the president look bad."
Oh yeah, they love doing that. Oh, they love doing it. Yeah.
So, like, if you're Jake Tapper and you're like, you are devoted to serving U.S.-Israeli aggression, this is putting you in a bad position. So, hence, you got to at least pretend to be adversarial a little bit.
Well, one thing that we didn't review, one reason that we're at war, was something that Lindsey Graham actually said on Thursday. This is a religious war, and we will determine the course of the Middle East for 1,000 years.
Yeah, he said that actually even before this war began. He said that during a visit to Israel about a month ago.
Oh, it was a month ago. Okay, sorry.
He was predicting the religious war. Yes, there have been plenty of people, like Mike Johnson also said, like their religion's wrong. So we got to go and I don't know, bring a new branch of Islam to Iran. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
It's all over the place. And Jake Tapper even has to put his foot down. Let's hear more from him.
Killed. Questions such as, were there adequate anti-air defenses at that U.S. base? Or even more basic ones such as, are we at war with Iran?
We're not at war right now.
We didn't start this war.
Nobody should classify this as war.
I have to go back and look at the war.
Okay. Or how about, how long will this conflict last?
You can say 4 weeks, but it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 3.
I swear that rings a bell.
It could last, 6 days, 6 weeks. I doubt 6 months.
Yeah.
So for our audio audience, Jake Tapper just put a clip there from Donald Rumsfeld, the defense secretary back during the Iraq War, saying this is going to be a very quick war, which of course it was not.
Yeah. Cakewalk. That's another great thing that they said about it. Yeah. No, Aaron, actually, Lindsey Graham said it again. It wasn't just a month ago. He said it more recently. He's really committed to this being a religious war.
See, we remember what happened the last time not enough reporters challenged an administration launching a war in the Middle East. And now this administration is attempting to grab the same tired playbook. They're attacking CNN for reporting inside Iran, showing what life looks like there. They're attacking the news media for asking questions of the president or the Secretary of Defense. They're attacking us for covering troop deaths. Guess what? We're not going to stop. It doesn't matter how many times the propaganda campaign that accompanies any war is deployed against us. So get used to it.
Wow. Yeah.
Get used to,
pretty good matchup too.
Get used to Jake Tapper being an adversarial journalist. I'm not going to get used to that because I don't believe it. But I will get used to the Trump administration just lying through their teeth, and the corporate media being unable to cover for it. So they'll have to at least pretend to be a little bit adversarial this time. That's how incompetent this administration is. That even Jake Tapper feels the need to, be adversarial. Wow. Okay, well, and that's going to do it for Monday morning. This has been an extended episode. We never go this long, but we had to this week because just the lies were too long, and we have to debunk what we can and, have a little laugh in the process because that's what helps us cope with this nightmare that we're all living through. Katie, anything you want to plug for the Katie Halper Show?
Oh, so yeah. So Lawrence Wilkerson, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, who has become an anti-war veteran. He will be joining, as well as Samira Moyahedin, who was supposed to join last week, but we had to reschedule. So that'll be a great show. 7 p.m. YouTube.com/The Katie Halper Show.
On Tuesday.
Yep. Tuesday, 7 p.m. YouTube.com/The Katie Halper Show.
Okay. That's going to do it for Useful Idiots Monday Morning. Our website is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content. We really appreciate your support and you for tuning in and joining us and weathering all these monstrous people and their talking points. It's not easy, but I think it's important to show so we can better understand the nightmare that we're in. And we appreciate you joining us. So thanks for being here.
And if you haven't already liked it, like the stream. If you haven't already liked it.
Absolutely. Please like the stream. Please share it. And please come back next time. We'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.